The breakaway forgets McNulty exists. Nairo calls on arkea to pace. Roglic is isolated and INEOS try to take advantage. This is Paris-Nice stage 5. Looked like a dead set breakaway stage. The Col de l'Amour is the main climb of the day, 7.5 Ks, 8.7%, and Jumbo-Visma would probably be letting a break go with a lot of people losing time in earlier stages like the crosswind stages. And that break went with McNulty in it, Jorgensen, 2 Americans, Turgis, Mercu was in it for Quickstep, Bonamour, Pichon for Arkea, Owain Doul for EF, and Harm van Hoeke for Lotto Soudal. Jumbo-Visma just pacing about 6 minutes behind. So Breakaway is going to win. Has Bert Blocken told Roglic that he needs to grow a mullet for the camtail effect? Is he copying me when I lost the plot circa 2020? Hard to know. Anyway, Breakaway got to like these short, steep climbs, but it was all before the Moor, and we saw McNulty not aggressively chasing the guys going for the KOM points. He wanted the stage. Jumbo still had their big guys at this point, and if you didn't see, about 15 riders pulled out of this stage before the stage started with sickness. Jumbo-Visma pretty much unaffected, I think. Would Yates try something on the Moor climb? He's not that far behind on GC. Would Nairo, Dani Martinez? They got 2 options with Yates, Adam Yates and Martinez. Nairo had a rider, Pichon, up the road. They get to the Col de l'Amour, 7 Ks, 8.3%. It's a serious climb. It reminded me this stage of the Conrad Tour de France break stage, and something similar would happen to that Conrad move. They were cat and mousing. McNulty, who's been up and down this Paris-Nice, moves to the back of the group. You see him get on the radio just as he goes out of screen, and he's telling everyone I'm about to attack pretty much. They forget he's back there. He loads off all the weight and then attacks to the right side. No one was on his wheel. Bang. If you are a follower of the lanternerouge.com.au website, if you read Ozzo's articles on Fornardesh, you know Brandon McNulty, 45-minute power and a solo. If you can't see him now, you're never bringing him back. He's a tank. I'll link that article down in the comments below, and he would go over the top of this climb, McNulty, with a 1-minute lead. He won that Fornardesh.pro race. He won Trofeo Calvia in Mallorca, and the only thing between him and victory was a descent. That's probably his weakness, is descending. He crashed in the Tour last year downhill, but on the flat, on shallow gradient climbs, he's a beast. And the young American takes his first World Tour level win. And he and the rest of UAE absolutely flying this season. He'll be going to the Tour de France later. Back in the GC group, they were approaching the Moor climb with pretty full peloton. We still had the flat domestiques on the front, Jumbo on the right, Bike Exchange for Yates, Bahrain for Jack Haig, Bora for Vlasov. And as they got to the bottom of this climb, Jumbo-Visma looked good. Full complement to riders. Wout van Aert there. Then Total Energy paced a bit for Latour. Then Arkea Samsic went to the front with Connor Swift. Jumbo got 5 riders in picture here. In the next kilometre or so, 500 metres even, they all disappear. Wout van Aert drops, Kruijswijk drops, and it's just Rowan Dennis actually left for Primoz Roglic, who was isolated pretty early on this climb with 37 Ks left after the pacing of Arkea. The problem for Arkea was Ede didn't really pull. I don't think he could after Swift, and then Dennis just took over. Guillaume Martin attacked because he didn't want to lose time on the descent afterwards, so he needed to get ahead in advance of that. And then Ede went forward as a satellite rider from the GC group. It didn't really work. They did something better in Tour des Alpes-Maritimes du Var for Quintana, but Dennis here was just able to shut it down on this climb. Steady pace. Group didn't really thin out anymore, and they all went into the descent with none of the GC riders dropped. A shallow gradient climb to finish, and Total Energy went again for Latour. It actually caught some riders by surprise, including Joao Almeida, who's in this weird no man's land of GC. I think he's have top 10 on GC. It must be the only explanation because he's on like 3 minutes. He got caught off guard. Dennis finally drops after keeping the group together for Roglic for the best part of the last 25 kilometers. And then Pierre Latour basically signals to Adam Yates. He's like, I'm changing gear, Adam. I'm about to attack. All right, I'm going. And so Adam Yates is on his wheel, and that doesn't really go anywhere. And then Adam Yates begins pacing. Martinez did a good TT yesterday. He's here in the group behind Primoz Roglic. He is the man Adam Yates is trying to set up. And Primoz Roglic couldn't have timed turning his head worse. He looks over the left to see if someone's attacking. Martinez slips up the right. Adam Yates then shuts off that angle to Dani Martinez back wheel, gets a lovely moto draft, and he gets a nice little gap whilst Van Sevenant is pacing. And then Vlasov is pacing. Look how big this group is. So it looks like Roglic is isolated, right? But always someone else will chase. Simon Yates begins chasing, and then he's marked by Almeida. Then Vlasov's there, and then eventually it ends up that all these guys do Roglic work for him because they're fighting for second, third, or fifth, or sometimes even eighth position, and it's a shallow climb. So there's really only so much time Martinez could take anyway. Like when Vlasov attacks, Yates closes him. And as it gets near to the end of the climb, finally, after not really burning a big match, Roglic sprints across to Martinez wheel, gapping Vlasov. Guillaume Martin was still there up the road. This is just before the crest of this 5k 5% climb, and that's the end of the stage pretty much. The only other interesting thing of note is Dani Martinez descending is still a problem. We saw on Giro stage 20 last year when Castro and Bernal had to wait for him. Through this right-left sort of S section, he hits the brakes really, really hard. You compare it to everyone else. Nairo is immediately ducked in front of him. He's like, nope, not sitting on his wheel. And he basically gaps Adam Yates off the back wheel of Nairo and Van Sevenant because he was going a lot slower and weird line through that corner, and Yates has to close it. So something to bear in mind with Martinez. It is a definite weakness of his, but then yeah, stage was over. GC group, no one would really lose major time. Everyone else just paced Roglic into the finish. Happy days for him, and Pierre Tour bike through for no bonus seconds. McNulty taking the stage ahead of Bonnemore and Jorgensen, both Americans looking very strongly. Van Hoeke, Pichon, Turgis, Madoua, Doul, and Latour and Pacher. In terms of GC, with Wout van Aert dropping, Roglic goes into the leader's jersey, 39 ahead of Yates, 41 ahead of Latour. INEOS do have the 1-2, both at around a minute with Martinez and Adam Yates. Are they going to try something tomorrow? Probably not, but we do have two tricky stages on the weekend to come. But until tomorrow's recap, ciao.